History isn't just a set of facts, it's a story. And like any good story, told over centuries, it's like a giant, global game of telephone. A little misunderstanding here, a bit of propaganda there, and suddenly, a complete lie is cemented in our minds as fact. We learn them in school and see them in movies, but the truth is often far more interesting than the fiction. So, get ready to update your mental files. We're about to debunk 10 of the most persistent historical facts that are actually complete lies. First up, Napoleon Bonaparte. The little corporal. The fact we all know is that Napoleon was comically short, driven by a short man complex. The reality: this was one of the most successful smear campaigns in history. Napoleon was about 5 feet, 6 or 7 inches tall. This was perfectly average for a Frenchman of his time, and actually slightly taller than the average British man. The little legend came from British cartoonists during the Napoleonic Wars. They portrayed him as a tiny, childish figure to demonize him and make him seem like less of a threat. The myth was so effective, it's lasted for 200 years. Next, picture a Viking. You're probably picturing a huge, bearded warrior with a horned helmet, right? Well, that image is pure fantasy. Despite countless archaeological digs, not a single Viking helmet with horns has ever been discovered. Think about it. Why would a warrior want giant handles on their head in a battle? Real Viking helmets were simple, practical, bowl-shaped caps. The myth of the horned helmet was invented in the 1870s by a costume designer for a Wagner opera. The look was dramatic on stage, and it stuck, completely overriding the historical truth. Here's a big one: Christopher Columbus. The story goes that he was a lone genius who proved the Earth was round while everyone else thought it was flat. This is completely wrong. Educated people in the 15th century knew the Earth was a sphere. That knowledge was over 1,500 years old. The actual debate Columbus had with scholars was about the Earth's size. Columbus, using flawed calculations, thought the Earth was much smaller than it really is. The scholars were right, and he was wrong. He only discovered America by accidentally bumping into a continent he had no idea was there. The flat Earth part of the story was invented in the 19th century by author Washington Irving. How about this one? Albert Einstein failed his math classes, proving that even a late bloomer can be a genius. This is a comforting lie. The truth is, Einstein was a mathematical prodigy from a young age. He found his school's curriculum boring, but he was reading advanced calculus for fun as a teenager. The myth might have started when his school briefly reversed its grading system, making the top grades look like failing ones. He did fail one entrance exam, but he aced the math and physics sections. Then there's Marie Antoinette. When told the peasants were starving with no bread, she supposedly said, "Let them eat cake." There is zero credible evidence she ever said this. A very similar phrase was written by the philosopher Rousseau when Marie Antoinette was just a 9-year-old child in Austria. It was a piece of revolutionary propaganda, pure and simple. It was the 18th century equivalent of a viral, vicious meme used to paint her as a heartless symbol of the aristocracy, which ultimately led her to the guillotine. Let's talk about the Salem witch trials. The image is of witches being burned at the stake. This is a case of confusing one place with another. While witch burning was common in European witch trials, it wasn't the method in the American colonies. The Salem trials were held under English law, where witchcraft was a felony. The standard punishment was hanging. 19 people were hanged on Gallows Hill. No one was burned. The popular image is a myth, blending European history with American hysteria. What about Emperor Nero fiddling while Rome burned? This is almost certainly false. First, the fiddle, or violin, wouldn't be invented for another 1,500 years. If he played anything, it would have been a lyre. More importantly, historical accounts place Nero outside of Rome when the fire began. He reportedly rushed back to organize relief efforts, opening his palaces to the homeless and shipping in food. The fiddling story was propaganda, likely spread by his political rivals who hated him. Moving to American history, George Washington's wooden teeth. Washington did have terrible dental problems and multiple sets of dentures, but none were made of wood. Wood would warp and rot. His dentures were actually high-tech for their time, crafted from hippopotamus ivory, gold, and a collection of human teeth, possibly held together with metal springs. The myth of wooden teeth probably started because the ivory would have stained and cracked over time, giving it a grainy, wood-like appearance. Next is the Battle of Thermopylae and the 300. The legend is that 300 elite Spartans single-handedly held off the entire Persian army. While the Spartans were incredibly brave, they were not alone. On the first 2 days of the battle, the full Greek force numbered between 5,000 and 7,000 soldiers. It was only on the final day, when the battle was clearly lost, that the Spartans, along with about 700 Thespians, remained to fight to the death. The Thespians' sacrifice is almost always forgotten, as Spartan-centric historians spun the story to emphasize their own prowess. Finally, the Great Wall of China. We've all heard it's the only man-made object visible from the moon. This is completely false. Astronauts have repeatedly confirmed you cannot see the Great Wall from the moon. It would be like trying to see a single human hair from 2 miles away. In fact, even from low Earth orbit, the wall is incredibly difficult to spot. It's narrow and made of materials that blend in with the surrounding landscape. Highways and airports are far easier to see from space. To read daily fact-based articles, head over to www.zentara blog. And don't forget to visit our Zentara blog YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe or follow this podcast on Spotify for daily episodes that will expand your minds.